Clonmacnoise, on the banks of the majestic River Shannon, is home to one of Ireland's greatest monasteries, founded by St Ciaran shortly before his death in 549. It takes its name from the Irish Cluain, meadows of the sons of Nois, a name which is perhaps much older than the monastery, that would become renowned as one of the great centres of learning, trade and craftsmanship throughout the early medieval period. The riverside location proved to be very important for St Ciaran's monastery. The Shannon effectively served as a north-south motorway during the early medieval period. It is also believed that one of the primary overland routes from west to east converged here at the River Shannon, meaning Clonmacnoise was at one of the busiest crossroads in Ireland during this period. It was also here that the boundaries of the two great provincial kingdoms of Connacht in the west and Meath to the east met at the Shannon, and over the coming centuries, Clonmacnoise received royal attention from both sides of the river. One of the early kings who became closely associated with Clonmacnoise was Flann Sinna mac Mhail, who was King of Meath and High King of Ireland from 879 to 916. Known as the Cathedral, the largest church at Clonmacnoise preserves much of a stone church that was built here in 909 by Abbot Coleman with the help of King Flann. Around this time, the two men also came together to commission one of the finest sculptures from early medieval Ireland. Known as the Cross of the Scriptures, this monumental cross was placed to the west of the cathedral. This cross is adorned with figurative carvings depicting various aspects of the crucifixion of Christ. The sandstone cross has suffered badly from centuries of weathering and erosion, and some years ago a decision was made to move the original cross into a purpose-built visitor centre nearby. The cross now standing in the graveyard is a convincing copy. A second high cross at Clonmacnoise has also been moved into the visitor centre and replaced by a replica in the graveyard. Known as the South Cross, it is slightly earlier than the Cross of the Scriptures and is believed to have been commissioned by King Flann's father, who was High King of Ireland from 846 to 862. Near the cathedral is a tiny church known as Temple Ciaran, which is believed to have been built above the grave of St Ciaran himself. Over the centuries, this building has begun to sink as a result of pilgrims removing soil from within the chapel for its alleged curative properties. During the 12th century, Clonmacnoise was closely associated with the O'Connor kings of Connacht. In 1115, Turlough O'Connor fasted at Clonmacnoise and presented gifts of a silver goblet and a drinking horn decorated with gold. After his death in 1156, Turlough was buried beside the altar of St Ciaran within the cathedral. In 1124, Turlough had assisted in the construction of the round tower that still stands here today. Originally, this must have been one of the tallest towers ever seen in Ireland. However, 11 years after it was built, it was struck by lightning and the top third of the tower collapsed to the ground. The finely carved ashlar masonry from this fallen section of tower did not go to waste. Some years later, they were recycled to build another tower, attached to the small Romanesque church known as St Fingon's. Situated a short distance to the east of the main monastery is the Nuns Church. It was completed in 1167 with the help of Dervla, daughter of the King of Meath and wife of the King of Breffni. The church was founded for Augustinian nuns and was a daughter house of St Mary's Convent at Clonard in Meath. St Ciaran, who had founded Clonmacnoise, had previously received his tutelage at Clonard under St Finian. The main features are the doorway at the west end and the chancel arch that separates the small chancel from the nave. These are amongst the most accomplished carvings of the period, and represent an Irish interpretation of the Romanesque art form that dominated Europe during this period. Back at the main monastery is Temple Malaclan with its twin late Romanesque east window. This was probably built at the beginning of the 13th century when the Malaclans were still overlords of the region, shortly before the Anglo-Normans arrived and built their large castle beside the monastery around 1214. In time, the area around Clonmacnoise reverted to the local Gaelic families, who continued to support St Ciaran's ancient monastery. The best example of this is a doorway that was added to the north side of the cathedral around the middle of the 15th century. Above the beautifully carved Gothic doorway are the figures of St Dominic, St Patrick, and St Francis. Once amongst the most prosperous monasteries throughout Ireland, the site is today rich in archaeological remains spanning more than 1,000 years. Clonmacnoise has been a national monument in state care since 1877 and is managed by the Office of Public Works.